Yo book nerds, I finished reading Winnie-the-Pooh by A.A. Milne. It has come to my attention that I have been pronouncing the author's last name incorrectly in previous videos, so my bad on that. I think I was saying Milne and I guess it's pronounced Milne, so my bad, A.A. Milne. So a few things I want to say right off the bat about this book is that I went into it like assuming that it would be like the picture books that I read as a child. And it was, to an extent, like they were the same or similar stories. However, this is definitely a children's chapter book. It is geared for slightly older children than, like, say, my 3-year-old daughter, who would probably enjoy the picture books much more than this, even though they're the same stories. Even though this is a chapter book, it's pretty episodic. Each chapter pretty much starts and ends a story. Chapters that come later in the book do reference earlier chapters, but you pretty much could read each chapter on its own. But the biggest reason why I say this is geared towards older children is because there are pages where there are no pictures at all. So it's definitely not like for little children, like I kind of would have assumed before I read it. The other part of it is this is an older book, and some of the language used in it, really young children, like again, like my 3-year-old, may not understand, just because some words and some phrases just are no longer used in today's world. And so if the child is a little older, they might understand it a little better. Not to say that it was difficult by any means. This was a very easy, quick, fun read, but it's definitely different than the picture books that are based off of it. This edition, though, I really love this edition because even though it's a chapter book, the pages feel like a picture book. I can't even describe it. And the art is so much fun. It's beautiful. This was illustrated by Ernest H. Shepard, and just lovely. It's just a lovely edition. I'm reading this in 2024, and this book came out in 1926, so it is 98 years old, which according to my definition would make it a modern classic because it is not quite 100 years old yet. But it is so close. So once it hits that 100-year mark, this is what I would define as a classic work. It is so close. It is right there. It's obviously going to survive long enough to make it to that point. The other interesting part about this book is that it is actually a framed narrative. So you have the narrator who is talking to Christopher Robin, and he is the one telling him these stories about himself and those that live in the woods, like Pooh and Eeyore and Piglet and Rabbit and Owl and all of the rest. So it is very interesting that the narrator chose to do it that way, I think. It's definitely not needed, but it adds another layer to it. Another thing about this work that I want to point out is it shows its age in the fact that, I'm going to try and find an example here. There was a time where in writing, sometimes authors would capitalize words that they deemed important. And so today they would not be capitalized because we only capitalize names and the starts of sentences and titles, etc. And so I don't know if this will focus, but like here you can see terrible and sad. Sad is capitalized because Milne deemed it an important word. Sad does not need to be capitalized. So that was just an interesting thing that I picked up on that just shows how old this book is. And it shows the era that it came out in because that was a thing back then. Sometimes authors capitalized random words because they were important. And that happens quite a bit throughout the entire book. But how did I feel about reading this book? Obviously, this is a children's chapter book and I'm an adult. But oh my gosh, was this so much fun. The nostalgia hit me from the very first chapter. So many of the stories I recognized from either having read picture book versions of it or watched shows or movies of it as a little kid. And it was just so much fun to revisit these stories and see the original work and where those all came from. This story was light and fun and witty, and that made it kind of fun to read as an adult because I think some of the wit would go over little kids' heads. Like, for example, there is a chapter where Pooh is walking in a circle and he thinks he's following someone else's tracks, and it may not become obvious to a little kid at first what's happening, but obviously as an adult you know he's following his own footsteps, and it's just amusing and cute and funny. One thing that surprised me with this was that Tigger is not in this book. I always thought Tigger was like there from the beginning, but Tigger is not in this first book. So I'm wondering if he will show up in book number 2. But I was expecting him right off the bat along with Pooh, because in my brain, Winnie the Pooh and Tigger just go hand in hand. So I was expecting him every single chapter and he never showed up. So I guess I will have to wait until book 2 to see if he shows up. There is a quote at the end of the book that I just want to share because I loved it. "When you wake up in the morning, Pooh," said Piglet at last, "what is the first thing you say to yourself?" "What's for breakfast?" said Pooh. "What do you say, Piglet?" "I say, I wonder what's going to happen exciting today," said Piglet. Pooh nodded thoughtfully. "It's the same thing," he said. I just thought that was so cute. Breakfast is very exciting, especially for Winnie the Pooh. I loved that. I thought that was so adorable. I have been in a bit of a reader slump. It's getting better, but grad school for me is just going crazy, and I'm reading a lot of dense stuff for grad school. I've been really busy with family and student teaching, etc., substituting. Like, life is going nuts, and quite honestly, this has been such a joy, and it's so light and fun. Like, I can just shut off all the crazy and just enjoy a story that I don't really have to think very much about because it's a children's story. So I definitely enjoyed this, and I'm excited to continue reading the books. I think that I'm reading them at just the perfect time in my life, to be honest. I just needed something light and fun. If you've read the original Winnie the Pooh, let me know in the comments what you think and we can chat. That's all I have for you today. I will see you next Monday. Hit like and subscribe. Thanks for talking books with me.